Hello, everybody. I'm Alex Nogales, the President and CEO of the National Hispanic Media Coalition. Today I have something terrible to report, terrible to tell you about, and that is the beating death of Luis Ramirez. It happened July the 12th in Shenandoah, Pennsylvania. He, 25 years old, undocumented. He got into a disagreement with 6 teenage high school boys who decided to beat him. And so they beat him. And they beat him until he went into convulsions, until the cross that he had on his chest was embedded so deeply in there that it made a mark. Luis died a couple of days later. Children, of course, are left without a father, fiancé, without a husband. And we have to ask John Trasvina of MALDEF, the Mexican-American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, is this a hate crime? And this is what John had to say.
It definitely was a hate crime. It occurred about a month ago in the Saturday night in a little town, Shenandoah, Pennsylvania, 5,000 people. A town that was started by immigrants in the 1800s, Polish immigrants. And today, the situation now is Latino immigrants are moving into the general area of Pennsylvania. But Shenandoah, it could have occurred anywhere in the country, and the devastating murder of Luis Ramirez is occurring around the country. We know that from the FBI reports, 35% increase in the last 3 years of hate crimes against Latinos. But what occurred in Shenandoah was people, young men who have been charged not only with murder, but also with ethnic intimidation. They are alleged to have kicked him. He suffered 2 fractures to his skull. He stomped upon high school kids. And it is just a terrible situation. Beyond just the devastating impact of the murder itself, it was the impact on the entire community. Because there are witnesses who overheard the assailants say, all the Mexicans ought to get out of town, in much more graphic language than I can use on this tape. But it is that type of sentiment that exists, and it comes from a variety of places. Sometimes people say it's frustration of today's economic system. It is a frustration when people see their, quote-unquote, their towns changing. Now here in California, Texas, and other parts of the country, where we've had Latinos living for centuries, literally, the tensions are a little bit different. But as the Latino community has moved throughout the country, the emerging communities in the Southeast, in Virginia, in Georgia, those are 2 of the states that really have some of the most anti-immigrant legislation, anti-immigrant sentiment that we see at MALDEF. And what we are taking on, I sent out 2 attorneys to Shenandoah. One, to console the family and to give them some protection. And second is to try to provide some security to the community itself. Because there are many Latinos who live in this community. It was our first order of business to try to provide some security and safety to the community. But beyond that, this requires a national attention. I've been disappointed by the media attention, or the lack of attention that this Luis Ramirez murder has had. But it requires national attention because, as I said, the numbers of hate crimes have gone up around the country. It comes from the media, from the right-wing talk shows, the cable shows, the internet, the bloggers. Those are really stepping up the anti-immigrant venom that's out there. Now, we've always had anti-immigrant sentiment in this country. We're sort of schizophrenic when it comes to immigrants. As a nation, we're proud of being a beacon of freedom for immigrants from across the world, whether they're fleeing persecution or whether they want to have a new life for themselves and for their family. We welcome them contributing to the nation. At the same time, newcomers who have come to this country, whether they came from Ireland or Poland or Asia or Latin America, have always started at the bottom of the rung and suffered abuses, whether it's the anti-Chinese laws in the 1800s, the deportations of Mexicans in the 1930s, whether they were citizens or not. We've had a cycle and a pattern, a historic pattern of anti-immigrant sentiment. So today's situation in Shenandoah is not much different than in the past. But we can do something about it today. We can stand up and fight back. One of the things that MALDEF did was call in the Department of Justice. The U.S. Department of Justice has authority over federal hate crimes laws. It's an obligation to take on these cases. So we were able to encouraged the Department of Justice to come out. They're now monitoring the case. We were very troubled at the beginning of the situation. Shortly after the murder took place, a number of the local officials were trying to sweep it under the rug and say, oh, well, they knew who the assailants were. They say, oh, well, these are boys from fine families. We know them. Wouldn't intend to hurt somebody or certainly to kill them. But the facts speak very, very loudly. The physical evidence, the witnesses make this a very, very different case. It is, in our view, a hate crime. Fortunately, over a period of 2 weeks, the local district attorney has charged these assailants with murder, with ethnic intimidation. And we are going to be out there again when the preliminary hearing occurs to make sure that justice is done in this case. And if it's not done by the local prosecutors, then the federal government can come in, as it has come in the past, where local prosecutions have not successfully brought hate crimes convictions. Well, there are a number of stages that go in any type of criminal case, and the prosecution is led, obviously, by the district attorney. So the district attorney will have the preliminary hearing in front of the county judge later in August. One of the issues coming up is whether the assailants should be tried as adults or as minors. If they are tried and convicted as minors, they could get off with a very, very short sentence of a couple of years because the court loses jurisdiction over them after they turn a certain age. Our concern and our strong belief is that they ought to be treated as adults. The seriousness of the crime and the impact that this crime has had in the community and throughout the community, both the Latino community and others in Shenandoah. I believe that over a period of the last month, people have taken up the opportunity to say, we've had a tragedy, crisis situation. What can people of goodwill do within that community to bring the people together? And we've seen the start of some progress being made. The mayor has apologized for some of the comments he made early on about the case, and we have seen now a local prosecutor bringing ethnic intimidation charges. But we have to keep at it, and it is not just in Shenandoah. This type of situation, this type of sentiment goes on around the country. So we are looking on it not only as a Shenandoah issue, but as a national issue. The nation has to speak out and say enough is enough.
Thank you, John, very, very much for coming into our studios and giving us an accurate description of what has happened and where this case is going. We are to be very appreciative of MALDEF because they are the organization that protects the Latino community across the nation from these kinds of abuses. If you want to see what else John had to say, and there was quite a bit, the solutions to these kinds of problems, please go to our archives where you will find part 2 and part 3 of what he had to tell us. Until the next time, Alex Nogales, goodbye.